Hello, friends of the story of me and you. Tonight, we begin an 8-chapter investigation into the hidden pixels of our planet, those strange gray smudges on Google Maps that whisper, keep out, strap in, open your hearts, and let curiosity be your compass. A puzzle in the North Atlantic. The Faroe Islands greet most travelers with soaring sea cliffs, emerald vales, and clapboard villages painted the color of weathered dreams. Yet, when you open Google Maps, you discover something unsettling. The western half of Vagar, home to fewer sheep than clouds, dissolves into a milky haze. No crisp satellite tiles, no winding coastal roads, just a blank nothing that somehow feels louder than any image could. The omission tugs at the imagination like a half-remembered song. The lead. Our tip came from Olivor, a retired ferry captain whose voice still tastes of salt. They've blurred the wrong side of the island, he chuckled during our midnight call, because the radar domes are actually farther north. His offhand laugh carried warmth, but the words chilled me. Radar domes? Was this about aviation safety or something classified? The line crackled. The North Atlantic always reminds you who's in charge. Paper trails and public records. The Faroes Parliament maintains an online registry of infrastructure grants. A meticulous, coffee-fueled scroll through 5 years of budget PDFs revealed a line item labeled simply, Regional Communications Node, Vagar, classified. The date? April 4th, 2018. The amount? Redacted. In a democracy famous for publishing the catch totals of every fishing trawler, a black bar across a budget line screams louder than a siren. Voices behind the fog. To balance the story, we reached out to the Danish Ministry of Defense. The emailed reply was concise, almost surgical. We do not comment on operational security matters. 15 sterile words, and yet they pulsed with implication. Faroe, though autonomous, is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. NATO patrol routes slice through these skies. Suddenly, the blur on Google Maps felt less like a software quirk and more like a lock on a door we were never meant to try. Humans on the ground. Still, life proceeds beneath the pixels. We met Sarah, a school teacher whose classroom window faces the blurred zone. Children ask why their homes vanish online, she said, eyes shimmering with both pride and worry. I tell them some stories are so powerful, even satellites can't carry them. Her words, offered in the soft cadences of Faroese, floated like prayer flags above the growing silence. A larger canvas. The moment Oliver hung up, I turned back to my cluttered pinboard. Faroe was merely the first pushpin in a widening constellation. France, Nevada, Panama, North Korea. Each blur hints at secrets, but also at the tension between safety and transparency. Who decides what we may see? More urgently, who decides what we must not? Emotional undercurrent. If you feel a tremor of indignation, you are not alone. Yet, nestled inside that frustration is something brighter, an almost childlike wonder that the world remains unfinished, storied, inconclusive. That wonder can galvanize us, students, veterans, parents on the school run, to ask kinder, sharper questions. Curiosity, after all, is a civic duty wrapped in delight. Looking ahead. Next week, we journey to the Rhone Valley in southern France, where a nuclear research complex hides behind vines heavy with summer grapes. We will sift through declassified documents, meet vineyard workers who joke about Geiger counters, and search for the fine line where national security meets public right to know. Until then, remember, every blur on a map is a mirror. What reflection will you choose to see? Under the grapevines. The secrets of Marcoule. In southern France, not far from the quiet town of Bagnols-sur-Cèze, the Rhone River bends in silence. There, the Google Maps view blurs into what looks like a digital sunburn, faded blocks stitched over the satellite image. Yet what lies beneath isn't ruins or restricted farmland. It's the Marcoule Nuclear Research Center, part of France's nuclear heritage, and its carefully guarded future. A vineyard fence and a military gate. From the outside, it's surprisingly pastoral. The air smells of lavender and fermenting grapes. But through the vines and stone walls, one can spot armed patrols. Locals call it simply La Zone. Most pretend it isn't there. Those who work inside never speak of it. A quiet leak. Then silence. On September 12th, 2011, a brief flash of truth broke through. An explosion inside the site killed one worker and injured 4 others. The government called it an industrial accident, but independent observers noted inconsistencies. Restricted media access, silence from CEA, and the sudden disappearance of a freelance journalist last seen near Marcoule 2 days earlier. Voices from the vines. Voices from the... We found Jean-Marc, a third-generation winemaker whose vineyard brushes against Marcoul's fence. His hands were gnarled from seasons of labor, but his voice was precise. "We were told to stay indoors that day," he said. "No explanation, just silence and helicopters." His daughter, Camille, showed us a photo, white vapor curling up over the treetops like smoke from a dream. The map doesn't lie. It omits. On Google Maps, Marcoul looks like a quiet patch of countryside, but military-grade resolution images, available only to select agencies, reveal massive infrastructure, cooling towers, underground silos, reinforced bunkers. The blurring isn't a software bug, it's an intentional decision agreed upon between Google and the French state under data security laws passed in 2006. A scientist speaks off the record. In a quiet bistro in Avignon, we met Leo, a former physicist who once worked at Marcoul. Over a bitter espresso, he said, "France wants to appear green, post-nuclear, but Marcoul is not history. It's tomorrow's plan." He refused to elaborate, but tapped the table twice, signaling the conversation was over. His eyes, however, remained restless. Patterns, not coincidences. As our investigation deepens, a pattern is emerging. Blurring isn't always about hiding danger. Sometimes it's about shaping memory. What we can't see, we stop questioning. What disappears from the public eye stops existing in the public mind. A note on hope. Camille, the winemaker's daughter, said something that stayed with us. "Even if they blur the sky, the grapes still grow." Her words echoed something more than resilience. They whispered of the quiet, enduring human spirit that blooms, even under a cloud of secrets. The silence of the sands. What we think we know about Area 51. Nevada isn't just a desert, it's a mirror. Heat waves shimmer off asphalt like mirages, and truth warps in the heat. Somewhere in that shifting landscape, near Groom Lake, sits Area 51. For decades, it was missing from maps. Then it appeared. But only just. A white space, no details. A void that, like a secret, only grows bigger the longer it's ignored. The fence that moves, unlike other blurred zones, you can't even get close to Area 51. Miles before the first structure, the road becomes haunted by warning signs, motion sensors, and white trucks watching from the hills. Locals call them camo dudes. They never speak, never step out. If you cross the invisible line, you're surrounded in under 90 seconds, no questions asked. The old pilot. We met Roy Tanner, a retired Air Force pilot who once trained near Nellis Range. He didn't talk about aliens, he talked about data. "We were testing tech 30 years ahead of its time," he said, eyes flicking toward the horizon. "The secrecy wasn't about UFOs. It was about patents, power, and not sharing it. A culture of speculation. Ironically, the less we know, the more we imagine." Area 51 has inspired books, documentaries, late-night AM radio, even memes. It has become a canvas onto which the world projects its hopes, fears, and fantasies. A place where absence of proof becomes the proof. The Google paradox. On Google Maps, Area 51 is no longer blurred, but it is flat. The satellite images are outdated, low resolution, and strangely clean. Compare it to any civilian airport. Runways at McCarran sparkle in high def. Groom Lake looks like a 1998 video game render. The blur isn't visual anymore. It's temporal. The woman who waited. We spoke with Lena Morris, widow of a radar technician stationed at Groom Lake in the 80s. He died in 2004, never having told her what he worked on. "He came home, tired, smelled like fuel and metal," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I stopped asking after the third year, but every night I still look out the window, just in case." National security versus public trust. At what point does protection become erasure? Area 51 may serve a crucial role in defense technology, but it has also become a symbol of distrust. When silence becomes the loudest voice, people start listening to echoes instead of facts. A single glimpse. In the Visitors Center at Rachel, Nevada, a wall is covered in handwritten notes, photos, and one quote scribbled in pencil. What if what they hide is not aliens, but who we become when we stop asking? The black stripe in paradise. What's missing in San Blas? On the surface, San Blas is paradise. 365 islands, one for every day of the year. Palms lean over crystalline water. Fishermen hum lullabies to the sea. But zoom in on Google Maps, and the illusion fractures. A bold black stripe cuts through the heart of the archipelago, censoring everything to the east. It looks like a glitch. It feels like a warning. Invisible neighbors. The islands are home to the Guna people, an indigenous nation known for their fierce autonomy and deep respect for the sea. But even some Guna leaders are unaware of what the blur conceals. "We can see those islands from our boats," said Elena, a Guna elder. "But on your maps, they disappear. It's like we don't exist there." A stripe, a silence. Satellite analysis confirmed it. The black stripe isn't natural. It doesn't follow topography or territorial borders. It's an imposed digital veil. One theory points to submerged military equipment left by the U.S. during Cold War operations. Another, more whispered, speaks of cartel routes, cloaked by agreements with corrupt officials, the diver who didn't come back. In 2017, a Colombian diver named Rafael Morales vanished during a reef exploration east of the Black Stripe. His fiancée, Marisol, still returns every year to light a candle on the shore. "I saw the tide pull him away," she said, "but something else pulled harder." Her voice broke, not from grief, but from doubt. A guidebook with a missing page. Every major travel guide skips over the censored region. No tours, no mentions, not even a dot on the index. Yet we found photos on local Guna phones, hidden beaches, abandoned watchtowers, symbols etched into stone, places with history, now denied space in the global memory. When maps become myth. One child, barely 10, pointed to the blacked-out section and said, "That's where the spirits live." It wasn't a metaphor. In the absence of facts, myths bloom. And sometimes they carry more truth than the official story ever will. Geography as memory. Cartography is supposed to be neutral, a mirror of reality. But when maps are altered, they reshape more than land. They reshape how we remember it. When places are erased digitally, their stories vanish next. And stories, like coral, die quietly without light. The airport without planes. North Korea's gray silence. Some places are censored by pixels, others by silence. North Korea is both. On Google Maps, its landscapes often appear intact, but look closer. Samjeon Airport is little more than a gray slab. No markings, no terminals, no trace of motion, just a shape, quietly unacknowledged. Frozen in time located near Mount Paektu, the symbolic birthplace of the nation, Samjeon Airport sits at the intersection of myth and military. Locals can't access it. Tourists can't even point at it. In Google, it simply desaturates it. The act of graying becomes more than a color. It's a message. There is nothing here to know. The guide who whispered in Dandong, China, just across the Yalu River, we met Min-jae, a defector turned translator. Over tea, she drew us a sketch of the airport from memory. "There are buildings underground," she said. "No one talks about them. They're for arrivals that don't go through customs." The missing metadata. We ran a metadata trace on satellite images over the airport region. Unlike typical airports, which show patterns of thermal activity, signal traffic, and human movement, Samjeon returned nearly blank. No timestamps, no updates. It's not just blurred, it's digitally suppressed. A plane that never landed. In 2009, a Japanese researcher tracked a private jet flying from Vladivostok towards Samjeon. It disappeared from flight records mid-route. "We don't know if it landed, crashed, or turned around," he said, "but the black hole of information is consistent. It swallows everything." When absence is the architecture. In most places, airports are symbols of movement, of openness. In North Korea, the airport is a monument to control. Its absence is its presence. Its silence is its structure. A letter never sent. Min-jae once tried to mail a letter to her cousin, who worked near Samjeon. It was returned unopened, marked "Invalid Region." "He lives," she whispered, "but on a map, he doesn't." The blurred democracy. Spain's secret building in plain sight. Almeria is known for its sunlight. Over 300 days of it per year. The sea sparkles, the markets burst with color, and tourists fill the ancient alleyways with laughter. But right in the middle of this cheerful mosaic lies a patch of silence. A government building completely blurred on Google Maps, with no signage, no window visibility, and no public explanation. A building that refuses to be seen. Zoom in, and the blur is absolute. No rooftops, no shadows, no context. The official title, Social Security Headquarters for the Armed Forces, offers more confusion than clarity. Why would a welfare office need this level of secrecy? Bureaucracy with teeth. We filed public record requests under Spain's transparency law. The reply came 2 weeks later. Access to information is denied under Article 15, Protection of National Defense Interests. An office built to serve soldiers now hides behind the same shield that guards weapons. The security guard who said too much. We found Matteo, a former night security guard at the building. It wasn't just paperwork, he told us, glancing around nervously. There were nights I saw unmarked trucks unloading crates. Heavy crates. He paused. Some doors only opened with retinal scans. Locals who look away. Carmen, who runs a bakery 2 blocks away, shrugged when we asked about the building. It's always been like that, she said. Quiet. Closed. People in suits. Never smiles. Then she added, you learn not to ask. Life's easier that way. When transparency is a performance, Spain, like many democracies, champions transparency. But a democracy that blurs its own buildings must wrestle with contradiction. Is visibility only for the show? What truths become unsafe to share, even with the people paying for the roof? A child's drawing. One morning, we noticed a chalk drawing on the sidewalk near the building. Simple. A gray square with a giant question mark in the middle. No name, no signature, just a message in silence. The island that belongs to silence. Jeanette in the battle over memory. Jeanette Island isn't large. It's just under 2 square kilometers, barely a dot in the East Siberian Sea. But on digital maps, it's more than small. It's missing. A smear of pixelated fog, a place reduced to guesswork. The flag that froze. In 1881, American explorer George W. DeLong planted the U.S. flag on Jeanette. He died shortly after, but the claim lingered, an unresolved whisper in frozen wind. Russia, asserting sovereignty, built a weather station there in the 1930s. Since then, neither side speaks of it, but neither lets go. Cartographic Cold War. On Russian maps, Jeanette is part of the Arctic motherland. On some Western sources, it appears grayed out or labeled disputed. On Google Maps, it flickers in and out of clarity, as if the algorithm itself isn't sure who to obey. The scientist who heard nothing. We tracked down Dr. Anya Morova, a marine biologist who once visited Jeanette on a Soviet expedition. There was no wildlife, no radio signal, no voice, she said. I've been to barren places before, but Jeanette, it's like standing in someone else's forgotten thought. Ice as evidence. Satellite thermal scans show that Jeanette remains frozen nearly 12 months a year. But beneath the ice lie traces of military infrastructure, insulated structures, radar spikes, and submerged antennas. Officially, nothing is there. But the ice keeps secrets better than any vault. A journalist lost in bureaucracy. In 2015, an American freelance journalist applied for permission to visit Jeanette via Russia's northern sea route. The application disappeared. Months later, her credentials were flagged for activity in sensitive regions. She never received a denial. Just silence. Who owns what we forget? Disputed territories rarely disappear. But Jeanette isn't just disputed. It's being subtracted. Not negotiated, not memorialized, just blurred. If memory is a form of presence, then Jeanette is being methodically erased, not just from maps, but from meaning. Paradise buried in silence. The shadows of Mururoa. From above, Mururoa Atoll still glows, rings of turquoise set against the navy of the South Pacific. But zoom in on satellite maps, and the image blurs, distorts, or vanishes. The silence isn't just digital, it's historical. Mururoa is where France tested 181 nuclear bombs between 1966 and 1996. A paradise fractured from the inside out.